in the year 345 BC, forming the short-lived Nanda dynasty, which wouldn't last all that long, but it clung on just long enough to see the arrival of an outsider to India in the form of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great entered India in 326 BC after conquering the Persian Empire. He entered the Punjab and entered the Jhelum River, known to the Greeks as the Hydaspes, where he met an Indian king identified in Greek sources as Porus. In May 326 BC, Porus marched his armies to meet Alexander at the Hydaspes. In the resulting battle, Porus's men fought well, but Alexander's forces proved more capable and managed to encircle and slaughter most of his army. Porus himself was injured and ultimately captured. However, Alexander was impressed by Porus's fighting spirit and decided not only to keep him in power, but cooperate with him as he moved deeper into India. Porus accepted, and his armies marched with Alexander eastwards, capturing the city of Sangala together later that year. Alexander's conquests stopped at the Beas River, known as the Hyphasis to the Greeks, later that same year. His exhausted army forced the conqueror to turn back and leave India. This decision was also made because of stories that another, much larger empire, probably the Nanda Empire, awaited in the east with 200,000 men, tens of thousands of cavalry, and thousands of war elephants. Porus was left in charge of Alexander's conquered territory east of the Jhelum Hydaspes River, but according to Greek sources, he was killed by a rival Greek general a few years after Alexander's death. Porus did not live to take advantage of the opportunities Alexander's death created, but another ruler and another empire was about to emerge to seize power and rise to heights never before seen in India. In 320 BC, the Nanda Empire was overthrown by an ambitious man named Chandragupta Maurya. Sources disagree on Chandragupta's origins. Some describe him as the son of the previous king, while others suggest he was from a family of peacock farmers. We also don't know how exactly he overthrew the Nanda, although some sources credit his advisor and spy master Kautala for helping him do so. Chandragupta rapidly seized power and began pushing the borders of his new Mauryan Empire west. Over the following years, he seized control of the areas India once held by Alexander, which led him into conflict with the Seleucid Empire. This confrontation between one of India's greatest empires and the largest of Alexander's successors is one of history's great lost wars. It's mentioned offhandedly by a few Greek authors, but we don't know anything about how it played out. What we do know is that Chandragupta won and took all of the territory Alexander had conquered in the Indus Valley and into Afghanistan. And in exchange, he gave 500 war elephants to his Greek foes, and probably married one of Emperor Seleucus's daughters. This encounter with the Greeks led to a visit by the Seleucid ambassador Megasthenes, who gives us the only real account of Chandragupta's capital city at Pataliputra. Megasthenes tells us that the grand city was surrounded by 21 miles of walls, with almost 600 towers and 60 gates. He describes the high position of Brahmins in Chandragupta's court, and his system of food distribution where farmers gave a quarter of their crop to the state, which Chandragupta could use to feed his armies. What we do know is that Chandragupta and his son Bindusara pushed the borders of the empire to almost the entirety of India. By doing so, the Mauryan Empire became the first state to unify most of India under a single power. The only regions that weren't conquered were the Kalinga region, modern-day Odisha, and some parts of northern Andhra Pradesh. The empire reached its greatest height under the rule of Chandragupta's grandson, Ashoka the Great. Ashoka began his reign by playing to the military might of the Mauryan Empire. He led a campaign against the state of Kalinga in the east that supposedly led to the deaths of almost 250,000 people. Seeing this destruction changed Ashoka, he was horrified at the bloodshed and his own role in it. and after 261 BC, he swore off war altogether and dedicated himself absolutely to Buddhism and the ideals of nonviolence. This brought an end to the Mauryan conquest phase, and Ashoka spent the rest of his reign regretting his past violence and working to be a devout Buddhist ruler. Ashoka raised pillars inscribed with his edicts across his empire, which provide us with a wealth of information on his reign. Of course, these edicts trumpet his achievements, but he also uses them to confess his past sins and explain how he will atone for them. He describes establishing hospitals and wells for the common people and patronizing Buddhist temples. In one inscription, he describes how he ordered banyan trees to be planted along the roads so travelers could have shade. He also made a pilgrimage to the Bodhi tree and ordered the first temples to be built where the Mahabodhi temple now stands. Ashoka is one of the most popular Indian historical figures, and it's easy to see why. Not only was he a good ruler who provided for his people, but he was a good person who recognized his own mistakes and dedicated his life to correcting them. Ashoka would have 4 official sons and 1 daughter from his multiple wives. His first son would become a Buddhist monk, revoking his right to the throne, so his second son, Kunala, became the crowned prince. However, one of Ashoka's wives, Queen Tishiraksha, had become jealous of Kunala's influence and intelligence, secretly plotting to have him blinded. One day, the queen forged a royal order from Ashoka instructing officials in Takshashila to blind the prince. Soon after, the prince's eyes were gouged out, disqualifying him from becoming king as he couldn't lead an army anymore. The son of Kunala and grandson of Ashoka, Samprati, was considered the next successor. However, he was just a baby. King Ashoka the Great died in 232 BC, but Samprati was still too young, leaving Ashoka's other grandson Dasharatha Maurya to take the throne from 232 to 224 BC. After the death of Dasharatha, Samprati took the throne of the Maurya dynasty from 224 BC to 215 BC. However, since the death of Ashoka, the empire had become much weaker due to its large size and its non-violence policy. After Samprati's death, 4 more emperors ruled the Mauryan Empire. Around 185 BC, the last emperor was assassinated by Pushyamitra Shunga, one of his own generals who went on to establish the Shunga Empire. What remained of the Mauryan Empire fragmented, and no empire would unify most of India again for centuries. The Shunga Empire was established in Magadha by Pushyamitra Shunga, ruled for 36 years, and was succeeded by his son Agnimitra, 149 BC to 141 BC. There were 10 Shunga rulers. However, after the death of Agnimitra, the second king of the dynasty, the empire rapidly disintegrated. This was mostly due to the constant fighting and wars. The Shunga fought the Kalinga, the Panchalas, and the Indo-Greek kingdom in the Shunga-Greek War after Greek king Demetrius took over the Kabul Valley and wanted to invade further into the subcontinent. After Agnimitra, there were a total of 4 kings from 141 BC to 73 BC. And Devabhuti, the last Shunga emperor, was assassinated by his minister, Vasudeva Kanva, who thereafter established his Kanva dynasty 73 BC to 28 BC. The 500 years following the collapse of the Mauryan Empire in 185 BC has been described as a dark age. The already sparse historical record dried up yet again, with entire kingdoms rising and falling without leaving enough information. What we do have doesn't paint a rosy picture. India split into numerous small kingdoms once again and faced waves of foreign incursions. The first of these came within a few years of the Mauryan collapse, when Greek invaders from the Central Asian kingdom of Bactria conquered much of northern India.